Okay, let's look at an example. Let's say you're into web hacking. You want to learn how to hack websites like interactive websites, dynamic websites that use databases. Basically websites that have communities like social networking websites like Facebook, similar websites like that. Where you can log in, you can register an account, you can post things like that. So how do you learn how to hack into that website? Well, let's look at it this way. First, what makes up that website? Let's see, a web server, maybe Apache for the server, maybe it's programmed in PHP, and maybe it has a MySQL database. Okay, if that's foreign to you, well then you know where to start. The very very bottom, the very basics. And what are the very very basics? I would say programming. You need to learn how to program, and don't just learn some random programming language. Learn the programming language that applies to the subject that you're learning. So if it's web hacking, get into learning PHP. Learn database languages like MySQL, and once you start learning how to program, you want to learn how to program securely, and what makes a program or a script unsecure, because that's what hackers take advantage of to get into websites, into like MySQL run, PHP run websites. They find unsecured code, or they test to see if there's any unsecured code with where maybe a script that accepts user information doesn't sanitize their data being submitted, and the writer, the person who wrote the code, is assuming that everyone's gonna enter what it says in the website. Like maybe it's an article submission form, and people submit text in there, and the guy can't assume who's writing it. Or maybe he does, and he's ignorant to everything else, and he assumes that maybe they're only going to put in articles. But then again, there will always be someone else who will look at that, and he will put in maybe a malicious code, malicious PHP code. And what happens when that runs through his script? Will it run his code? Will it give him access to the website? Maybe. So you have to learn how to code securely and how to sanitize the submitted information, because there will always be that one person who will try to get into your website, and you have to know how that works. And once you know how to code, and what happens when things are submitted into your form or something that wasn't meant to be submitted by you, and what happens when they submit that code, you'll start seeing all these attack types and how hackers get in. And basically, once you understand the programming language, you'll understand pretty much any type of attack against that programming language. And then let's look at getting into user databases, where they store usernames and passwords. Once you have someone's username and password and you're targeting that user, there's not much. You don't need much else. And if you can take advantage of maybe security vulnerabilities or bad written code for that accesses the web server, the database, and you can inject things into the database, and access the database, and then what can you do from there? So then now you have to actually know how the database works, how it stores information. How does the database store information? How does it export information? What is that database's language? How can I talk to that database? You have to learn the actual database, and so that you know that once you have some access, how do you go about dumping the username and password database? See, I hope you can see how what I'm trying to get here. You have to learn the technologies that run these websites from bare roots. You have to know how everything works so well that you know how people take advantage of these things. And you can look at the same thing with wireless hacking. Maybe you might ask someone, how do I hack someone's router? And they might tell you, go check out this program, this AirCrackNG program. You can just crack web keys and WPA keys and get the password. And sure, you might go ahead and find some tutorial that tells you how to do that, but whoop-de-doo, you were able to run a program, click a few buttons, and you got a web key. Okay, big deal. You learned how to use some simple program. But what happens when this program isn't available, or there's some other program that's a little bit more complex? You don't know what's going on in the background. You don't know what the hell this program is doing. No, you don't. You're pretty much a script kiddie. You learn how to use a program. You're no hacker. Um, Basically, you have to start from the very bottom. Learn how networks, what makes up a network, how is it built, what hardware is involved, and then look at the very even lower, the OSI model, the Open Systems Interconnection model. Um, what or how is information transferred over the internet from network to network? How is information pushed across my computer, from my router to someone else's, some other computer? How does my email go from my computer over the internet to someone else's server? You have to learn the very basics. And once you learn the OSI model, you'll be able to find and see all these loopholes that hackers are taking advantage of, and see how they work, and how these programs were developed for these loopholes to take advantage, and then you'll realize and see how everything works, and you'll be able to make even your own programs. So that's why you want to learn a programming language for whatever subject you're learning. So for wireless hacking, you might want to learn C. It's a very powerful language, and you can create sniffers. You can create wireless hackers, password crackers, and all these things. So basically, I hope you're seeing the big picture here. Hacking isn't just some simple thing. There's a lot to it, and I would recommend picking a subject, sticking to it, learning everything you possibly can about it. And once you really know it, once you really know the topic, move on to another one. Don't scatter from password cracking to making viruses, malware, to wireless hacking, to reverse engineering. Because if you just I went through that stage when I first started. I had this this need for information. I kept reading and everything, and then within a month after reading, I knew nothing. Well, sure, I knew little bits and pieces of how things worked, a little bit here and a little bit there, but I couldn't put it to use. I couldn't put it. Take action and do something. Stick to a topic. Find something you enjoy, learn it. Learn from the very bottom up, and you'll see what I'm talking about. You'll begin to learn. You'll begin to see how things work, and you'll be able to apply it to real life situations. And within some time after you learn all these different type of attacks and subjects, you'll be able to see and put them, all these attacks, chain them into giant attacks. Like, let's say you get into a website through I don't know, some RFI, remote file inclusion attack, because the PHP script or navigation wasn't filtering user input, and then you were able to include a shell. And from that shell, let's say you learned about Linux and how to run exploits against Linux, and how to hack the operating system of Linux, and you learned how Linux works, and all the whole back end, how it processes things and everything. And now look at that, you got access from the front end, the script in the front. Basically, let's say maybe some membership script, that some PHP member script, I don't know, whatever. And you went from the front, and now you have access to the actual server. So now what do? Well, if you learned about Linux and the operating system, now you know that you can probably get root access to the server by maybe extracting the user file and password, and cracking maybe the password for the root user. Or maybe you can run some exploit, some C buffer overflow exploit that you learned from programming flaws in C that you can take advantage of, and you can run against the system. And then from there, maybe you learned about malware, and now you can actually use rootkit and root the actual machine, so you have access to it, well after you leave the system. So whenever you need, maybe you want to use it for maybe a botnet, add it to a botnet. But basically, you see the whole picture. All these methods and attacks, they all come together eventually into a chain of attacks that you need to be able to conquer some machine. When you first start out, it's a while out there until you have that kind of skill. But eventually, you'll be up there. And the more you learn now, the more easier it'll be to learn further down the road, and the more understanding you'll have systems and things. So I hope this wasn't too confusing. I didn't really have anything prepared. I just kind of talked. If you have any questions, just feel free to email me at comments@mrcracker.com, or just go ahead and leave a comment on the blog, mrcracker.com, and I'll be looking forward to your questions. I'll read it on the show. So far, I haven't gotten any, so I'll be closing the show right now. But go ahead and email me, and I'll respond. And I'll respond in the show as well. So that's all I had to say for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. I hope you understand the big picture now. You can see how the question, how do you learn how to hack, is not the right question. But well, that's that's about it. I'll see you next week.